Should the Jazz take a guard? Which of Anthony Black, Cason Wallace, and Kobe Bufkin would it be? And which should it be? Find out next on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, all. My name's Leif Thulin. I'm excited to be back with you this week for Draft Week, filling in for David Locke, who I appreciate the opportunity as always. And I'm excited to talk to you guys, Jazz fans like myself, who this is a big juncture for Jazz Nation. I'm a lifelong Jazz fan, credentialed NBA draft analyst for Locked On NBA Big Board, attendee of the 2023 NBA Combine, Jazz broadcast assistant and statistician, and lover of college basketball. So I'll bring a unique appreciation for how these guys played because I've seen all of them about 20 times. And not only that, but I am a statistician. So all the geeky numbers you used to won't all be gone. Maybe not quite as much, but they'll still be numbers and an insight from college basketball lover like myself as we head to a critical juncture in the Jazz franchise history, quite frankly. The Jazz have accelerated the rebuild, now have 3 picks to head to a huge moment and 3 picks to change the trajectory of a franchise. Thanks for making Locked On Jazz your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Jazz is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Jazz, where the best way to help us grow is to comment anything below. And today's question is, which guard is your favorite for the Jazz? Today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks, where you can make player projections in any sport, anytime. And I've used it for tennis. I've used it for baseball. It's pretty fun. All right, roadmap time. In the first segment, I'll break down Anthony Black's game, give a pitch as to why he's the most desirable guard for the Jazz and why. In the second segment, I'll discuss Cason Wallace's fit with the Jazz and why he could be the Jazz's man at 9. And in the final segment, I'll talk about the rise of Kobe Bufkin and what traits make him a possibility, even maybe a front runner for the Jazz at 9 or maybe 16, and then rank the players to my eye and then compare it with what I believe the Jazz may prioritize based on intel, what I've overheard, and then most importantly, what deficiencies the Jazz have had in years past. All right, let's dive right in. Anthony Black. Anthony Black is 6'6", practically, 6'5.75 without shoes, 210 pounds, 6'7.5" wingspan, 19.4 years old for those of you who really care about age as opposed to classification. And he went to Arkansas, scored nearly 13 points a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.1 steals, 45% from the field, 30% from 3, and 71% from the free throw line. Interesting numbers that they are. Anthony Black is a talented rim attacking point guard with superb positional size that allows him to be an elite point of attack defender. Black played on an Arkansas team that, just to contextualize for you guys, and you guys may have heard this, their spacing was abysmal. Like, college basketball spacing gets a lot of laughs because they're poor at spacing in general. Arkansas was poor beyond comprehension at spacing. They had 4 players that are likely to be drafted: Anthony Black, Nick Smith Jr., Jordan Walsh, and Ricky Council Jr. But none of them were able to space and shoot. So the one player that I think was hindered the most was Anthony Black, who's a creator, whose best attributes are getting to the nail, being a rim attacker, and kicking out to players. And he wasn't allowed to do that because there was no space to operate. And then you take away a pick and roll game when everyone can sag in and defend the roll man and the driver. So I think Anthony Black's numbers need more contextualization than a lot of these other players that I think the numbers are speak a truer truth than what Anthony Black's does. I think Kobe Bufkin's are interesting, and I'll get to that as well. But I think a lot of stats have grains of truth. These ones, especially in the shooting ones, and maybe the departments of like, oh, how does he finish at the rim? You got to contextualize the difficulty with which he was working with, despite having a talented team that made the Sweet 16, and he was the heartbeat of it. So this, I think what was directly impacted is this led to him facing pack defenses, which made his knack for putting pressure on the rim, reaching the nail, very impressive, because it was still the main thing that stood out to me. And it became more and more difficult as the year went on, as it wasn't just fluky misses. It was like, these guys can't shoot. And therefore, let's play the best defense we can and guard their best player in the best way we can. And it made sense. And I think that's what the narrative of Anthony Black can't shoot. Anthony Black may not be worth the pick. Maybe he's Michael Carter-Williams. People forget Michael Carter-Williams won a Rookie of the Year and was a good basketball player in the NBA. So Black, as for his shot, that's the big concern. I'm going to address it with the concern here. He didn't shoot well and has a slightly funky release. It doesn't look broken, though. Like the Thompson twins shot so poorly at their workouts that it was basically shut down and said, let's move to a new drill. And they like the improved, and I'm doing air quotes for those of you listening and not watching on YouTube, the improved shooting stroke looked just so uncomfortable for the Thompson twins. Anthony Black's stroke looks improved in videos I've seen, and it looks fluid. It's obviously videos in open gym. These guys are all phenomenal basketball players, so they can hit shots in an open gym. But I do buy that there's enough touch. And 71%, it's not great from the free throw line, but it's high enough to where I don't red flag it as, okay, no chance of improvement as a shooter. That's an upside thing. I think that if he's able to do what he did in college and extend that to an NBA level, if he's able to shoot and improve, which I think he can, that helps his upside and his floor. Black is in the mold of jumbo facilitators who is uber competitive and will do anything to make a difference in the game for his team, whether like on offense or defense. Took shots, facilitated, defensively guarded the best wings more often than not. He and Jordan Walsh, and he fills stat sheets. And I think in college basketball, to have someone make an impact in that many categories for a team that did have talent is telling of what he's capable of doing. He fits the Jazz in what they need and what they have needed. And I'm going to emphasize that. The Jazz have needed positional size in their backcourt. Like you currently see a team that likely has Colin Sexton playing in the backcourt. Agbaji's also features in. But what the NBA prioritizes right now is positional size. It is versatility. And he has that to a T. The Jazz need a defensively oriented guard who has the ability to create for others. That is the reason the Jazz would want to take him. Are there concerns? Sure. He's not a good shooter. 70% from the line, 30% from three, 32% on all jump shots, doesn't create a ton of space in isolation. And these are some nitpicks, and these are just some notes I put on my profile all along. I take notes all year. And can be tentative and rush, overpass, causing turnovers or worse shots, 3 turnovers per game. I put a star near that. Reliant on playing with advantages versus teams with better athleticism, meaning he attacks closeouts as opposed to beats them with his own dribble. And, these are nitpicks. Everyone's going to have deficiencies, and every scouting report, there's strengths and weaknesses. Many people compared him in a negative way to a guy like Michael Carter-Williams. And that essentially was pointing out he doesn't have a shot, and it hurt him. So maybe even though that guy was a triple-double threat as a rookie and won Rookie of the Year, let's diminish all that and say, well, yeah, you know what? I don't see it. So the rim pressure around him and an already 30% shot makes me a little less trepidated, because I think spacing in the NBA plays to Anthony Black's advantages and what he's very good at, more so than it makes his weaknesses apparent. Here's a few strengths that I listed when watching this season that encourage me. Slashes the rim with ease and creates for others. He's got good vision, even if assists sometimes lack due to poor shooting. Like, it looks like he understands the game at a higher level than any of the other guards in college basketball. I think Amen Thompson may have better true creation ability due to just top-notch athleticism, and same with Scoot Henderson. But I think of the college guards, Anthony Black easily sees the game the best. He was effective in the pick-and-roll game, even in a condensed court, and should excel in that role in the NBA. Statistics bear that out, and it was hard to watch their 2 big sets and lack of shooters, and he still found a way to do that. And he rebounds very well and makes other intangible plays that win games at high level. He fills stat sheets offensively, defensively. And I'll admit, I had second thoughts. When I heard the comparison to Michael Carter-Williams, I dropped him. I had Black at one point early in the season as high as 6 and dropped him to 10 after the season, despite loving him all season long. I was like, man, why should I do that? I spoke with longtime Jazz coach, legend in my mind, Gordy Chiesa, and told him about Black during the midseason. And Gordy responded with, I will have to watch him, but this guy sounds fascinating and a good addition for what the Jazz are lacking. That was the way he put it. That brings me to a point of distinction, why I believe the Jazz feel they should take Black. The Jazz want a point guard to play with Sexton and THT and Agbaji, who are all off-ball players in my mind. I know THT and Sexton have tried at point guards. I don't think they play the point guard, and I don't think the Jazz in the long term want them to. Black is the best true point guard of the trio that we're discussing today between him, Wallace, and Bufkin. Black is both physically the biggest out of these guards, and he plays the biggest of these guards, rebounding, defending, passing, scoring, using his size to do so on all facets. It's interesting. Cason Wallace has some Drew Holiday and Marcus Smart comps talking about his defense, and this is not to diss Cason Wallace. I really like him, as you'll hear next. But Black is bigger, and Black is bigger. Cason is not a big guard by stature. He's about 6'2.5" without shoes. Kobe Bufkin has to grow into his body, weighing only 185 pounds right now. Black fits the two biggest needs for the Jazz and fits absolutely specific to what the Jazz need presently and in the long term. And I know the Jazz liked what they saw from early in the season, and he was a guy that they thought they could play easy minutes early in his career, even at times saying maybe he could play immediately. Black very well could be the best defender of these guards in this class, especially of these three guards, and in this class, including the Thompson twins, and this trio of guards. Like Cason Wallace touted as a good defender, Bufkin defensively talented, and he could easily be the best defender of these guards, despite Cason Wallace drawing the comparisons to the defensive player of the year from a season ago in Marcus Smart, and one guy who's regarded as the best defensive guard in Drew Holiday. So I think, simply put, Black guards more players with his size because he's just able to guard more players. I think he can guard 1 through 3 because of his size, whereas Cason Wallace is more fundamental and guarding 1 and 2s. He's going to be a perimeter stopper. I think Anthony Black has more dynamism defensively and athletic playmaking that the Jazz may prioritize. And Black has more growth to make on that end, shooting the ball, than do Cason Wallace or Kobe Bufkin, which means I think he's got more potential that's untapped than most people may think. Coming up next, I'll tell you what there is to like about Cason Wallace, and in my opinion, what he does better than his two peers. But and what his pitch is for the Jazz taking him 9th, or maybe later down the draft, as rumors have the Jazz pursuing aggressively, moving up from their 2nd pick, and what that pitch is for him going there. But first, let me tell you about Ibotta. Groceries, school shopping, and getting a little something for yourself. You know, we're already doing what we have to. And why not get cash back for it with Ibotta? Watching your closet grow after purchasing all of this season's latest trends. How about watching your cash back grow with each purchase? That sounds pretty nice, and it's available with Ibotta. You can earn cash back on every shopping trip. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items to produce personal care to pantry goods. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year in real cash back. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, or a couple, depending who you pay for when you buy your trips. You could use that cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. A typical basket of groceries was over $50 more expensive at the end of 2022 than the beginning of the year due to inflation. You could earn 2.5 times that in cash back from Ibotta, or even more, depending how much you use Ibotta. You can earn cash back in hundreds of online brands and retailers too. Start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED, LOCKED, when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKED. Welcome back into Locked On Jazz. I'm Leif Thulin, and thanks for making Locked On Jazz your first listen. And every dayers, get ready for tomorrow, where I talk to Tony Jones of The Athletic about what he hears and thinks about the Jazz's 3 selections. And also, check out Locked On's mock draft special. Only Locked On could do it. I was honored to be a part of it, breaking down some of the picks, and David Locke did a wonderful job picking for the Jazz. If you haven't seen it already, I encourage you to listen to it and learn what's likely to go on in the draft, because we've got experts all over the network. Check it out. All episodes are available on Locked On NBA Big Board or YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Check it out. It's awesome. Back to today's show. And we're discussing 3 guards that the Jazz are linked to in different spots in the draft, and they all could go 9th. There's a strong possibility the Jazz are thinking about them anywhere in the back end of the lottery should they trade up, or at 16 if one of these guys falls. So let's talk about Cason Wallace. What's there to know? Here's what I wrote about him in an overview on my big board as the season progressed. It's just a little breakdown. Cason Wallace is a coach's dream. Cason is regarded as defender first and foremost, but also possesses an expanding offensive arsenal that is not heavily reliant on any aspect of his game. He may be the most complete prospect in this class that comes from the NCAA ranks, with the fewest true weaknesses. Wallace is arguably the best guard defender in this class and has a claim to be the top shooter among guards that expect to hear their name in the lottery. Wallace combines point of attack defense and fundamentally sound 3-level scoring into being regarded as a top 10 pick. Not a bad player to pursue. Not at all. Like that is a coach's dream and a high floor with upside of the appeal of like Kentucky guards typically getting better. And he draws comparisons to the players I mentioned before, like Drew and Marcus Smart. That's someone that the Jazz really should have their eye on. The concern is he's billed as a big guard, and I don't know if he truly is a big guard, but we'll delve a little deeper into this situation. Cason Wallace often gets likened to premier defenders in the league, like I just mentioned, and he deserves praise for it, but it may be a misnomer as those two players are all NBA defense and one-time defensive player of the year. So that may not be achieved, and that wouldn't make him a bust. I just want to say that. Like Marcus Smart and Drew Holiday are phenomenal defenders, but their number of all defensive teams is shockingly low if you look at it, just because of how hard it is to make the same level of impact as a guard defender, especially at the size that Cason Wallace is, than it is to make an impact on the front line. I think it's a swayed statistic, but those are the premier guards that he often draws comparisons to. So I don't think sometimes where there's smoke, there's a fire. And I think this is true. There is legitimate defensive all defense upside with Cason Wallace. Let's talk about what the Jazz could expect, though. Cason is a late bloomer to the point guard position, so there is untapped potential offensively, but also less proven playmaking and just like innate playmaking ability. You haven't seen as much of it, so you can spin it to saying, hey, there's a lot of untapped potential. We believe we can cultivate it and mold the ball of clay. Or you could say, well, if he hasn't played much point guard, how is he going to facilitate and run our offense? And, be an integral part of that. That's all right. Cason Wallace ran 133 pick and rolls as the ball handler and produced well in those attempts. If he becomes a decisive point guard with the improved spacing in the NBA as opposed to college, while still hitting his mid-range shot, which he was exceptional at, and playing the great defense that he's known for, there's certainly a high ceiling for Wallace. Does it mean superstar? I tend to say no. But that's the pitch for him. Doesn't seem too far-fetched, but is difficult to attain, to be an all-defense caliber guard who's got untapped offensive upside, and like maybe you getting 17 points a game. That's a really, really good player. It may not be all NBA caliber altogether, but all NBA defense and a guy who can score in the mid-range, has a decent shot that's only improved as he's played more on the perimeter as opposed to his kind of youth where he played on the interior. That's a pitch for sure. What are the concerns? Here are the weaknesses I listed in my player profile. Not a super athletic guy who has burst that stands out. How well can he be the primary facilitator in an offense where more is asked of him? Does the shot project to the NBA three-point line? Didn't shoot a ton at Kentucky, shot well, especially to start year. It started to dip. Doesn't create loads of space and isolation, uses brawn more than wiggle, like meaning he's strong and it's not like explosive moves that get him open. So those are the things. That's what I watched Kentucky. I'd say I watched Kentucky 15 to 20 times this year. And I saw him plenty of times. I also watched all 133 of those pick and rolls. He's probably the best mix of offense and defense of the bunch, like at where he is right now. If you're just not projecting, if you're just saying, hey, this is what they are, that's probably the best mix of offense and defense. But this is projection. You have to project. His floor may be the highest of the three as well, because defense can make a role for him, and he's a better shooter than Black, and in many ways close to Bufkin from deep, and he's a large amount to grow, and Kentucky guards tend to take a leap as guards. Would the Jazz front office take him? Fit-wise, he makes sense. Hardy probably likes him, though playing the point guard right away may be difficult. The only drawback would be a concerted effort to get bigger, and he does not help, nor does he hurt in that department, whereas the Jazz has saw how it worked. They had Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley, phenomenal offensive players, but it really left them deficient defensively. And I think the Jazz at all costs are trying to get bigger. They're not necessarily tied to taking a guard. They're not necessarily tied to taking a forward. They just want a really good basketball player with positional size and versatility. An ability to shoot the ball is preferable as well. but the size I think is the biggest asset. So that's why I think he's a little bit below the tier of Anthony Black in terms of what the Jazz wish list prioritizes and dictates. Coming up next, I'll break down the Jazz, a draft darling in Kobe Bufkin's game. I know David Locke did so, but I will have a different perspective. And I'll say whether the Jazz could say, let's get him before he's gone at 9 because they worry he's going to be gone. Maybe reach higher than prioritize. Maybe the Jazz try to move up at 12 and get him. And I'll break down what I think the order is of the Jazz's preference in terms of their wish list by the way that I think that the Jazz are prioritizing these selections. That's all coming up. I think Ainge, Zanuck, and Hardy are building something special and really have a wish list that has a three-pronged approach. And I'll break that down next. But first, a word from PrizePicks. PrizePicks is something I've used before, and I highly recommend. How does it work? Well, you pick players to have more or less points, rebounds, assists for basketball, strikeouts, innings pitched for baseball. I've even done it for tennis, and you can bet you can place projections on how many aces there are going to be, how many games they will play. Wimbledon's coming up around the corner just before you know it. There's some random tournaments going on right now. I'm a big tennis guy. How does it work? Pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you can watch, like I talked about: NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, tennis, MMA. It's got everything. No need to worry if it's going to be there. Download the PrizePicks apps or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100 back. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50 back. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Also, let me tell you about Murdoch Chevy. Murdoch Chevy has been in Utah for over 80 years. Chevy is American. Like, if I think of a car in an old Western American movie and I see a truck rolling down the road, it's a Chevy. Like that's the first thing that pops in your mind. They've got locations in Murdoch and Woods Cross. Murdoch Chevy has locations in Woods Cross and Logan, and the great lineup of Chevy trucks never fails. It always is impressive, and they're always well stocked. They've got the Colorado, the Silverado, and many more. Just go to the website and see the latest deals. The amazing lineup of SUVs also are featured, including the Tahoe, the Suburban, the Blazer, the Equinox, and the Trax. Check it out and get yourself a nice Murdoch Chevy. Welcome back to Locked On Jazz. I'm Leif Thulin, and I'm excited to be with you guys 1 week away from the draft as I'm recording this, and sooner when you hear this. It'll only be a little while away, and I know the anticipation is going to build up. So respond on the comments. Talk to me about this. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm eager, as you guys all are, to see what the Jazz do. I wish I could tell you with certainty I know what's going to happen, but I will try my best to tell you what I think the Jazz will prioritize. But let's talk about Kobe Bufkin. David Locke talked about Kobe Bufkin and why the Jazz should take him. He thinks that's the guy. That's the guy that he should take. That was the billing, and every dayers, I'm sure you heard that. So David Locke loves Bufkin and did a podcast I know you guys heard. And I'll explain why Bufkin is someone not only Locke loves. It's someone on Draft Twitter that is drawing lots and lots of love and intrigue. But here's the interesting thing. He's avoided doing workouts. And I think it's because someone high up in the draft, higher than you might have anticipated a little while ago, has given him a promise. And he doesn't want to mess that promise up. You could make the argument that he's hiding. And I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I'm certain he's got a promise. But one thing's for sure, I'm pretty sure he's going to go in the lottery. And I think there's too much stock in him being a positive for him to flip out to 16. So I think if the Jazz want to land Bufkin, it's going to be 9 or trading up. I don't think he goes to 16. So what's to know about Bufkin and what's to compare to his competitors in Cason, Wallace, and Anthony Black? Kobe Bufkin, 6'5" and a quarter, 187 pounds, 6'7" and 3/4 inches wingspan, 19.7-year-old sophomore from Michigan. He took an enormous leap from his freshman year to his sophomore year with an increased usage, and he played the point guard as opposed to the two guard, which is what he played as a freshman. Averaged 14 a game, 3 assists, 4.5 boards, a little over a steal a game, a little under a block a game, 48% from the field, 35.5% from three, and 84.9% from the free throw line. Good shooting splits. Kobe Bufkin switched to playing point guard this year, and this is the overview I wrote for him. His sophomore year, and his game ascended, complemented his speed and height with scoring guile and improved passing to make himself a potentially lottery pick. The lefty shot well, according to all metrics. Athletically, he impressed as well, showing a knack for clever finishes near the rim. Bufkin projects as a two-way combo guard with untapped ability to run an offense, who is good at just about everything in college and has the athletic capacity to carry over his strengths from college and apply them to the NBA. Similarly to Wallace, he is newer to playing the point guard, and that could be good, but there's also less knowledge of how to play and not less innate playmaking ability than Anthony Black demonstrated in his distribution ability. So what does he do better than Black and Wallace? He's a better finisher and isolation player, and a better free throw shooter would dictate he's a better shooter too, despite there's not enormous differences in their percentages. He's 84th percentile in isolation, 72nd percentile in pick and roll, 59th percentile in spot up, and 81st percentile in transition. So isolation and transition, to me, talk about athleticism. It talks about what type of wiggle they've got with the ball, what type of speed and burst they have in the open court. And the pick and roll is, as it sounds, it's facilitation. Can they score? Can they pass, navigate out of the pick and roll? And then spot up, 59th percentile is not great, but it's solid. He's also 71 percentile at the rim. And that is, that's not even percentile. He's 71% at the rim. And that's going to be closer to 90th percentile. While those are positives, there are some concerns. But overall, he's a very good at a lot of facets of the game. He's very good at a lot of things. He's not a master of any one trait. And that may concern some people, but I think when you're drafting at the tail end of the lottery, maybe 16, like the Jazz are, should he fall there, which, like I mentioned, I kind of doubt that is going to happen. You don't necessarily find guys who have masters of one trait unless they have significant deficiencies, and you almost would prioritize someone having a lot of strengths, even if they're not as supremely stacked in one side. So here are the positive. Those are the positives. There are some concerns, but overall, I like what I see. He must get stronger to compete with NBA guards defensively. He was at times pushed around a bit. He's very frail, and he's in the gym working to get bigger. That's something I think he can do. He's not the best ball handler. He can be sped up, which leads to turnovers. A lot of games, Michigan runs through Hunter Dickinson, a big man, and they played with Jet Howard, another guy who's likely a first-round pick. And he got sped up, made some errors in games where you're like, man, you should be able to take over this game. But he was a great teammate and was supportive of Hunter Dickinson and Jet Howard. Good shot, bad shot, and that's something I admired. Too many turnovers. I think that goes to the sped up. For his talent as a finisher and proclivity to go to the rim, he did not shoot that many free throws, and that's something I like in a scoring guard, is the ability to draw fouls. I think that's an innate something that if you know how to do it, you're going to become a better scorer. And that's something I think it's hard to learn, but we'll see. And can he shoot off the bounce? I'm not sure, as most were on the catch. He shoots isolation, like mid-ranges off the bounce, but his threes, like that's a huge weapon, is shooting threes off the bounce and how much it bends the defense. So without further ado, I believe the Jazz first priority and what they're going to prioritize if taking guard is getting bigger in the backcourt and having someone who can create advantages on the court by his lonesome. And that's why I hypothesize the Jazz, if all three were available at 9 and they do take a guard of these three, maybe Osar Thompson or Amin Thompson slips, but that seems unlikely. Anthony Black would be that pick. In my opinion, that's what the Jazz would prioritize. In second, I believe the Jazz would take Kobe Bufkin because I believe he'll be a lottery pick. And if he's not, the Jazz would definitely consider him at 16, as his upside is more clear as a two-way combo guard. I think it's unlikely the Jazz would take Cason Wallace as the 9th pick, and I don't think he falls to 16. So I think the Jazz would prioritize Bufkin's ability to score the basketball that he demonstrated at Michigan, a little more scoring prowess than Cason Wallace, a little more room to grow with more dynamic athletic traits. And once again, that has something to do with size. I think there's more room for him to navigate and become a better scorer than there is for Cason Wallace. But I think Cason Wallace has a higher floor immediately than does Kobe Bufkin. One appeal for Cason Wallace is that right away you'd get a good defender and someone who can play intelligent, smart minutes. I just think there's less playmaking and scoring appeal for him. And Anthony Black's definitely the best playmaker, along with being the biggest and playing the biggest. And I think the Jazz really want to prioritize getting bigger and being stingy defensively. And I think Anthony Black's got a chance to be a tremendous defender and someone who makes an athletic difference. The Jazz haven't had a guard that has made an athletic difference defensively in a long time. Donovan Mitchell was a tremendous athlete. Defensively, you didn't know that because he was not the best point of attack defender. He's become better. He played well against Jamal Murray in Game 7 of that fateful series where the Jazz blew a 3-1 lead, and he showed what he can do defensively. It just was inconsistent. I think Anthony Black's constant effort, athleticism on the perimeter is something the Jazz have sorely needed for a while. Why I think Jaden McDaniels was still the pick over Desmond Bane, despite how good Desmond Bane's been, had they taken one of those guys over Udoka Azubuike. I think McDaniels provided a unique level of athleticism the Jazz have sorely lacked, and that's why I think the Jazz would, of these three players, take Anthony Black. We'll see what happens. I'm happy to engage with you guys about this and go back and forth about perspectives on this. Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Jazz, and look forward to tomorrow's show, as I do, because I can't wait to talk to Donnie Jones. I haven't heard too many of his thoughts as he's been busy covering the Nuggets, and I know he's got some as someone who covers the draft very seriously and has knowledge of what the Jazz franchise likes to do, interacts with them. I don't know if he's going to have the knowledge of what they're going to do, but at least he knows how they work, and he's in contact with these guys frequently throughout the course of the year and can provide intel as to what the Jazz prioritize better than I can. So that'll be a trend of tomorrow's show, and I'm super excited to hear about what Tony Jones thinks of some of the guys the Jazz are most entrenched with and projected to pick, whether it's smoke, whether it's not, what's the latest. And for your second listen, check out some of Richard, who came onto the show on Friday's work on Locked On NBA Big Word, along with Rafael Barlow. And until you hear from me, and as always, go Jazz.